Hello, peoples. Yes, I know I changed my spot. You guys are usually a little bit more that way. You guys are being pushed back more into the corner. I change my room around like 2 or 3 times a year, so this is the side effect. You guys see it in the videos. But anyways, this is kind of like a Halloween special review, I guess, because there's 3 horror movies I saw and 3 horror movies I didn't review, and those are pretty big horror movies actually. Saw 10, The Exorcist Believer, and The Nun 2, and that's the order I watched them. So I will also be reviewing them in the order that I watched them. I didn't really have any expectations for any of these movies, as I don't really care for the Saw franchise. I was not familiar with The Exorcist until I watched the original for the first time about 4 weeks ago, and then I watched The Nun 2 reluctantly on HBO Max. So here we go. First, we're going to talk about Saw X. When the reviews for this movie came out, it was glowing, like weird glowing, because it was a Saw movie, the 10th installment, actually getting good reviews when Saw fans and Saw people were just used to bad reviews. And so Saw X was a good Saw movie. Was it a good movie? It was okay. We continue to go down this train of let's empathize with John Kramer, which is something that's really bothered me about the franchise. And yes, I understand. Yeah, we want to expand his character a little bit more. We want to have a further of understanding, but it's just like now it's getting to the point of like, oh yeah, we feel bad for the old man now, and he has cancer, to the point where I'm just kind of like, you are asking me to feel bad for a psycho that kills people. And I understand, yes, he has this moral code where he thinks he's not actually killing people, but yes, he does kill people. But anyway, the movie at least knows how to have fun, and so I'll give it props for that. And this is probably my favorite Saw sequel, showing you how bad the rest of them are. And I'm happy to say I enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed like Saw 2, or maybe even Saw 6. It was a fun movie. It had cool torture sequences. It had many moments that made me laugh, going like, yeah, right. It just kind of dialed things to 11 when it needed to, but it also kind of knew how to build the audience's interest as you're watching it, rather than trying to think about how it can relate to the last 8,000 movies and forget to be its own movie. And that's my biggest problem with the Saw series. After the second or third movie, it just forgets to be a movie itself and relies on the last 5,000 movies to be a twist on that. And to the point where it just gets way too convoluted, way too confusing, and I don't want to think about it. I just want to see people get torn up. And that's what happens in this movie, and that's what you get. So, I mean, it was passable. It was fine. It was still a little, like, dull of a watch for me. Yes, it had me cringe. It had me reacting, and that's what you want out of a gruesome movie. But when it comes to necessarily the characters, didn't really latch onto. Like, I am curious about John Kramer, but what the franchise is asking as me as an audience member to feel about John Kramer is just like something I really can't get on board with. There's motivations that I understand, and that's true. So, I mean, good for them for doing that this time. It's still just a mediocre installment for me. It went by fast. I kind of wish that we spent a little bit more time developing some of the characters in the traps, while we have the first 40 minutes of the movie to really set up what these characters do that's wrong, and then we get into these traps and we don't really get to know them anymore. And some of the twist, it's not really even a twist. There's a thing at the end. Basically, the part of the movie where they play the Saw music was extremely underwhelming, and I wanted something a little bit more satisfying, because when you hear that music, you kind of supposed to feel satisfied, and when it was happening, I just kind of felt nothing this time. Saw movies are known for their twist, and this movie's twist was just kind of non-existent or not shocking for me. Yeah, for the people who like the franchise, Amanda's back. She's crazy, and they're crazy together, at least. I mean, it is somewhat fascinating to see John Kramer as a psycho and try to maybe understand him, but to me it just feels so one note and not something that the writers even care about, beyond the fact just like, oh, you kind of feel bad for him. I don't really feel like they get in depth about who he is, which is fine. It's just when you focus an entire movie so heavily on him, it just kind of makes me question of like, what's the necessity here? And that's been like the biggest thing about this series since the second movie. Why do we need to keep on going? We are still on the 10th installment. There is a after credits sequence I did not stay for but heard about, and it has me more so concerned about what they do continuing from here, because this franchise continues to be extremely silly, but hopefully the sequels after this just try to have fun like this movie did. I'm going to give Saw X a 6.2 out of 10. Entertaining. Is it particularly good? No. Okay, next up is The Exorcist Believer. this movie got trashed in the review, and it kind of surprised me how trashed it was. I mean, wasn't expecting the best reviews ever, but I also don't hate David Gordon Green. I actually like a lot of his horror installments. In fact, I don't really dislike any of his Halloween movies. I really enjoy 2018 Halloween. I think Halloween Kills is a lot of fun, kind of dumb, kind of very similar to what I think of Saw X. And Halloween Ends, I think, is a little underrated because I think it's a very fun Halloween movie. So I was curious to see what he could bring to The Exorcist. And out of those 4 movies, this one's definitely my least favorite. I think David Gordon Green has very good ideas. I just don't think he really ever puts them in good stories. There are good ideas and sequences in this movie, but A, they're all in the trailer, and B, they just kind of feel too far and in between to make a reason to make a movie. There's a lot of like great performances in this one. I think the 2 girls, they're scary and they do a good job. The movie is sadly not very compelling because the first act of this movie, actually, I was kind of interested. I was like, okay, I'm on board. And the second act of this movie, I was really bored. And the third act, I was just like, there's some cool stuff, but nothing really to make me go like, this revitalized the franchise. But at the same time, when I watched this movie, I just watched the original like a few days before, and I really liked the original. I didn't love the original, but I would say I love the original. It's just kind of like just a light love. At the same time, I can't love a movie like that when I just watch it for the first time. Ask me again in 2 or 3 years, I could love The Exorcist. You know, when you watch The Exorcist and it sets such a high bar, and then you watch this mid-exorcism movie afterwards, you can't help but feel just underwhelmed. I don't think this movie is as bad still as people are saying it is, but it's still just kind of dreadfully mediocre. Makes you question, why are we here? They bring back Ellen Bernstein, and it just wasn't necessary considering everything in the movie with her can just be taken out, and I really feel like nothing changes besides the fact you go, oh wow, that's the person from the first one, and she has her scene or two with scares, and it's just silly overall. I mean, there's some clips of her on Twitter, and it's just a silly joke, and that's not even what I'm talking about with some of her scenes. There is at the end of the movie some kind of cool like moral question I thought was pretty interesting, and I thought there was like a fun twist in there. And when the movie ends in a somewhat like a 50-50 dark place. 50% of it's dark, 50% is maybe a little uplifting. So, I mean, the movie for me is actually a mixed bag. I think there's really good ideas and a screenplay that just doesn't fully come together, with scenes that are cool and great David Gordon Green cinematography. I think all 4 of his movies have had pretty good cinematography, but sadly I just didn't find this movie to be very compelling. So I'm going to give The Exorcist Believer a 5.4 out of 10. And lastly, I want to talk about The Nun 2. The reviews for this movie were actually a little bit better than I expected, considering how much I did not like the first movie. Then I heard that this movie was an improvement, so I was like, okay, yeah, let's check it out on Max when it drops on there, because I don't want to bet money on this. Actually, this movie was actually pretty successful because I think The Nun has become iconic, not the movie, but the character. Yeah, I did not like this one either. I did not like this movie at all. In fact, this is probably my least favorite out of the 3 movies I'm reviewing, and I did not expect that. If I had to guess which one would be my least favorite before I saw these movies, I probably would have said Saw X would be my least favorite, then this movie, then The Exorcist. No, I thought this movie was really boring. There are good scenes, like The Exorcist, Believer. There are very, very scary scenes. In fact, some of the scariest scenes out of all these 3 movies I'm reviewing. It's just the movie, whenever there isn't a scary concept or idea, the movie's just so dreadfully boring. It's moving at a slow pace, and half the movie we just spend going somewhere as the nun scary scenes happen in between. And you're just not kind of questioning, why are these scenes necessary besides just a conference room pitch of a scene? And then it just kind of felt like it was just inserted in the story to make the audience care a little bit more, because I honestly feel like the first half of this movie is mostly scenes that have no correlation of the nun just scaring things, which is fine. It's scary. It's a movie you can put on in the background and be like, oh wow, I didn't see that part coming. But as a cohesive film, it just doesn't come together. It goes by really slow. This movie is under 2 hours. It felt like 2.5 to me. There are returning characters with this movie, and I kind of forgot about the characters in the first movie. So I kind of had to, since I was watching it on Max, I just paused it, gave myself a little bit of a refresher, and then it was like, okay, yeah, it's that character. It's that character. And the returning characters, they didn't use them well. In fact, I would have preferred you just scrap those characters and start from fresh. It's the Nun. You can refresh these characters and do something new with it. So it just makes it feel like these returning characters just kind of stain the movie for me. And I hate to say that because like it's not the actor's fault. And I'm sure they really wanted to come back for a sequel because it's not like I see their names every day. So it makes me feel bad for saying that. Their presence kind of stained the movie for me, not the acting. There are a cool idea or two in this one. In fact, there's this creature in the movie that has nothing to do with the nun, and I thought it was the most terrifying part of the movie, and I actually had to look away for a couple minutes. So props to that. Storm Reid is in this movie. I think she's a good actress. I just don't know why I cannot take her seriously in this movie. Mostly because I'm familiar with her in Euphoria, where she's just kind of playing a teenager, and I've seen her like in a movie like Missing, where she's playing a teenager, like a Gen Z type teenager, and it's just weird to see her as a nun in this movie. And it just maybe, I don't know if it was poor casting or if it was the acting. It's just not, her character didn't 100% work with me. I could not necessarily put a finger on it. It's just maybe it was casting. It's just maybe she just didn't fit the character for me. Yeah, the Nun 2, it was boring. I just wanted it to end, and like the last 30 minutes had some cool stuff. I'll give it that, but it was not enough to make me go, yeah, it was worth it. You know, it just felt like these movies have James Wan production company there, and they get these scenes done and they do it very well. But whenever it's up to like other people to do stuff, it just falls flat. And so that's why I'm as harsh as this on this one as I am, because there are good scenes, but there's stuff that you would expect out of the Conjuring universe. But anything that you expect to build on it as the film as itself doesn't work. None of it does. So I'm gonna give The Nun 2 4.2 out of 10. So comment down below what you guys thought of these three movies. What's your ranking? Obviously, my ranking from worst to best is The Nun 2, Exorcist Believer, and then Saw X. And unfortunately, like, yeah, this is my Halloween video. I didn't really care for any of these movies. I mean, I thought they all ranged from bad to decent. So, I mean, I guess that's the consensus this year. I mean, I'm not letting those be the only movies that I watch. I am doing a double feature right now. I'm just letting this be my pause in between of The Shining and Doctor Sleep. Both fantastic, fantastic movies. And if you haven't seen Doctor Sleep, because I know that movie bombed, check it out if you like The Shining. I know that it's kind of mixed in with critics, but I absolutely love Doctor Sleep. So that's my horror recommendation. Watch The Shining and Doctor Sleep back to back. I mean, I haven't done it yet, but I'm pretty sure I'll enjoy that double feature. So yeah. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that, and adios.